Alright, welcome to another video, and in the second part of this video we will be exploring data types. Right, in the world of data generally, um, data analysis, data science, business analysis, data engineering and all. Right, data types are one core concept for us, because it tells us, it tells a device how a user will interact with it. Simply how data should be stored and how it will be used. That's what it defines. Data type simply defines. It simply tells us that, oh, save me this way, because these are ways that it can be used. So if you save a data wrongly, you might not be able to use it the right way. Just like in the previous video where we found out that a user input returns a string data type, which is a text. Now, if we leave it as text and we wanted to say, oh, this person will be, for example, this year, we said it was a +1, right? At that point, we could not carry out that calculation. Why? Because we're trying to add 1 as a number to a text. So the data type was not correctly defined, hence the error happened, right? So data types are very important to us. Without correctly defining data types, we will not be able to work on the data the way we want to do it, or will not be able to achieve what we want to achieve, or analyze the data properly. So it is important that we understand the data types we have in Python, so that we can use them properly. So in Python, every piece of data we work with has a data type. So understanding data type is crucial. Why? Because they determine the kind of operation we can perform on the data. Very, very important. Python is dynamically typed, no doubt, meaning that we don't explicitly declare a variable type. Python infers it at runtime. What does this mean? That means, unlike SQL, where we tell, when we're creating a table, for example, we say create table, we put in the table name, then we say the data type. So let me just type it so that you can see what I'm saying. However, if you do not have an SQL background, that's absolutely fine. Okay, we'll still look at what we want to look at together and you understand. So, but if you have an SQL background, you understand what the code I'm writing. So I'll say create table, then let's say table name. Let's just use the syntax. Then I open a bracket and I say maybe ID column, then data type should be what? Integer, for example. And I can say name will be the next thing. Name, and I can say varchar. Okay, varchar, let's say 255. Right. So in this case, I have to is a must. It is required that I define the data type. But for Python, we don't have to. Python infers it by itself, so we don't have to explicitly define the data type. Can we do that? Yes, we can. But by default, Python handles it for us. So it is dynamically typed. One of the flexibility that it has. Okay. Now, first one, or the first set we'll be looking at, basically we have 4 major categories of data types, which are numbers, text, Boolean, and dates. Okay, so we'll be exploring the important ones and the core ones to us. So let's look at numbers first. For numbers, there we have the integer, we have the float, and we have the complex. In this particular lesson, we'll not be looking at complex, because that's where we'll do some maybe mathematics, advanced mathematics, engineering calculations, and all of that. But that is not within the scope of this video. But it's important that you know that we have such thing as a complex number. Okay, so Python supports various types of numbers, and the first one is integer, which is all numbers, positive, negative, or 0, without a decimal point. Okay, then we have the floating point numbers, right, which is float, of course, and that is numbers with a decimal point. Numbers with decimal point. I think it should be numbers with decimal point. Yeah, that's just English. Let's leave it by the way. So, and the last one, which is complex numbers, numbers with real and imaginary parts, right? That's 3.3 plus 4G. So 3 is the real part, while 4G is the imaginary part. Don't worry if you're an engineering person, you have engineering background or advanced computer science background and all of that, you understand, or mathematics background, statistical background, all of those things, you understand what this means. However, if you don't have any of those backgrounds, do not panic. That is not within the scope of this course, and we are not looking at it. So just stay. Don't leave the video yet. All right. So we'll look at majorly the integer and the float. So let's explore the number types that we have. So we can say age of a person. We can say 50. We can say height. We can say the height. So we can say the height in centimeter now. So 70.5. Then we can say the weight. We can say the weight is oh, that's the negative value. So we can say the weight is let's say maybe someone very fit, 75 kg. Okay, that's in kg. And then salary. So we can say salary is let's say ₦1,000,000. Okay, so this is what we have. Let's run this. Okay, so this is what we have, and we can print them all. We can print them all in one single line. So say age, height, weight. So once you type a little, it should appear. Okay, to appear, and obviously you'll be able to see the data type as well. Weight, and then the last one, which is salary. So you can see it's appearing already. And of course, I'll print this. I'll run this. So you can see 50, 70.5, 75, and 1000. However, Python gives us the flexibility, not just Python. Most programming languages or programming languages gives us the flexibility of separating large numbers like this without causing any error. So that means I can use an underscore, see that, and this is more readable. Okay, I can use an underscore and this is more readable. Do not be tempted to do this. Okay, you can see what happened by doing that. It formed a tuple for us, which we'll still look at some point. So, but an underscore easily understands that, oh, okay, it's just a separator, so it escapes it. It understands that it's not part of the figure, but it makes it readable when we use it. Okay, now let's check the data types that they have, because we're looking at what so say age is of, then we'll say comma, type is the keyword to use, is of type, let's say is of d type, is of d type, then we'll say type, then we'll pass in the age itself. So this will show us the data type of the age. So we can paste for the rest. So this will be height, then we'll pass in height. Of course, you've learned how to just check by clicking on it, by hovering. You can see the data type already, but so that we can see it physically. So we'll have weights as well, and then finally we'll have what? Salary. So salary, this will be weight. All right, so this is what we have. So let's execute them. And you can see it says age is of d type, that's data type integer, class of integer, float, integer. So this is the only one that is a float. So let's say, for example, I want to change this to temperature of something. I don't know what the temperature is, but temperature of anything, and I put negative, okay, negative value. So immediately it underlined this, saying, oh, we no longer have what? Age. So let me just use temperature. Let me also use temperature here. All right, so I'll just change this to temperature, even though that's just a text, but I'll change it to temperature as well, so that doesn't look confusing when we print it out. Okay, so temperature, I'll run it. Temperature was not defined. Yeah, this is a common error. Now if you look at where it's printing at, it's pointing at, it's saying name temperature is not defined, even though we have it here. Now remember, the last time we executed this cell, age was there. So we have to re-execute it again so that it saves it in memory. Now this happens sometimes where we just even write the code up here and we forget to completely run it, and we're trying to refer or infer them in another code cell. So it will show errors like this. It's just like maybe in SQL, for example, you wrote a create statement to create a table, but you are yet to create the table and you're trying to do a select all from that table. It tell you, hello, I don't recognize what you're doing. Okay, so all I have to do is just go back here and run it. Now temperature is available, and I'll come down here and run it again, and boom, just like that. You can see that even though there's a negative sign, it is still what? Integer. So integer can take both negative and positive. Same thing with floats, negative or positive. All right, so this is just a what? A separator. Do not forget that. All right, so for example, how do we convert weight to weight to float? Because in reality, things like weight are continuous variable. They are continuous data type, right? They're continuous. So if they are continuous, a continuous type of data, yeah. So if they are continuous, that means they are probably, or they definitely most time will be decimals. Not most time, they definitely be decimal. You cannot have a rounded whole number for them. So how do we convert? Now the pro tip is to convert from one data type to another. All you have to do is to type the data type, for example, int, or in this case, we want to do float. So let me print it. So I'll pass it into a print, and then I'll do float, then we'll say weight. So weight, just like that. So in this case, it says convertible to float. So it's telling me that, oh yeah, you can convert this to float. So if I print this now, you can see it's now what? It's not having that 0.0. But here it is also, it was just what? 75. So now it's having what? 75.0, which makes it what? It's now a float. And if we print the type, and we can say now it is of d type, and I'll put a comma, and we can say type. Okay, take that out. So we can say type, all right. So we can say type of float converted, right? Because we didn't save it in the variable, we didn't override the variable, so we'll print directly here. It says 75.0. Now it is of the d type float. Okay, all right, let's run that again, so you can see just like that. For example, we can convert anything to Boolean as well. So let's say I have this, and I say, how do I convert to Boolean? Bool, and I can say Jack. So this can happen for any data type as well, even though we have not seen that. And say convert it to true. And for Boolean, when we get there, we'll also maybe mention it. Let me just mention it now so that I don't skip it, or just in case I skip it. Now for Boolean, whenever you convert anything to Boolean, it always returns true. The only thing that resolves to false is 0, none, or an empty string. Okay, so those are the only things that resolve to what? To 0. Now let's look at this. Pro tip. When performing arithmetic operation between an integer and a float, it is important to know and keep in mind that Python automatically converts the integer to a float to avoid what? Loss of precision. That way, the result will always be a float. Why is it like that? So that if there is a decimal value, it is precision. Now, if you remember, if you take your mind back, all right, let me leave that by the way. Now, let's stick to what we're doing here. Now, if we have decimal values that are important to us, because one part is whole number and the other part is decimal, and we cut off the decimal part, that questions the integrity of the data. Okay, so for precision's sake, the result will be a what? A float. The only time you get an integer is when you perform an operation between two integers, then you get an integer. But if one side is a float, or it's just the same thing with division, when you divide two integers, the result will be a float. Even if they are divisible, even if the number you used is purely or okay divisible, the result will still be a float. Okay, so you might want to keep that in mind. So we have this right here. So we want to do an integer float, integer number. So let's say 50, and then we'll do a float number. A float number, then we'll say 7.5. Okay. So now the sum of the two numbers will now be integer number plus float number. So we're saying the form of int and float is this, the type is this. So let's find out if we actually get the data type of float. Oh, the sum of the integer is not what? 57.5, and the type is of class what? Is of class float. So let's look at some methods that we can apply on numbers. Some methods that we can apply on numbers apart from conversion. Apart from the conversion that we've seen, we can see, as you can see, absolute, right? So let's say you're performing an operation. For example, I did 7 minus 9. Now, by default, this will give me a negative value. But if I wrap it in absolute, boom. So let's print that. I can get what? I can get actual number itself. You can see I'm getting the actual number itself. I'm not getting the negative value. So that is what absolutes can do for me. Let's also print. Let's test out the power, the exponential. So just put power. So I can say 2 raised to the power of 3. And this will give us 8. You can see just like that. And now the sweetest part about the division or the div mode is that you get the quotient and the remainder. So whatever you divide by, you get the value, and if there's any remainder, you also get the value. So let's try print that's div mode. Then I can say 20 divided by 4. Of course, this is purely divisible, no doubt, but you can see what I have. So div mode, and it says what? 5 remainder 0. But if I use, for example, 3, so that we can test the way it works. So you see I'm getting 6 remainder 2. All right, so that's how it works. Of course, these are just a few things we can do. We can do pure mathematical operation on them, addition, subtraction, and all of those things. But when we get to operations, we will also look at it in proper. Okay, we'll look at the different kind of operations that we have or we can do. So yes, this brings us to the conclusion on numbers as a data type. Let's move on to floats and then we look at Boolean, and then close or wrap this particular one up. So for string, let's expand it. Now, strings are sequence of characters, or we can call them array of characters used for text data. They are basically text, okay? So they are enclosed in either single quotes as usual, except you're absolutely new or you're completely new. You might not know, you might find it strange, but if you're not, then you understand already at this point how that texts are the ones that go in quotes, okay? Single quote, double quote, triple single quote, or triple double quotes, okay? So let's create some string. Oh, I have something here already. All right, let's create some string. So we can say language, Python. We can say about. We can say simple to learn. Then we can say dev profile, developer's profile. So we can do this. All right. So we can say let's say the developer is Bam Bam Bam. Uh, Bam Bam is a dev. Is a dev with a decade of experience. He lives somewhere on earth in this world. In this world. All right, we'll just keep it at that. By the way, this is not developer of Python, just so you. The developer of Python is Guido van Rossum. Anyway, so I think I'll just put that here instead. Okay. Yeah, I believe this is spelled this way. Of course, this is not the actual profile of him, so this is what we have, and I'll just keep it like this. Okay. So we're saying the developer of this particular Python programming is what? Guido van Rossum, and is a dev with decade of experience, with just a decade of experience. It lives somewhere on earth in this world. Okay. So this is what we have. We can execute it, and of course we can print them one after the other. So we can print the language, we can print the about. Let's print them on different line. In this case, print about, and we can print the dev profile. Okay, and print the dev profile, and I'll run that. You can see Python, simple to learn. And you can see how it's printed this nicely. All right. So okay, let's do it this way. Okay, since we have a line here, so I just had to add a new line. So \n is how you add a new line. So Python, simple to learn, and Guido van Rossum is a dev with decade of experience and all of that. All right, so basic operation on string. Basic operation of on string. We can see we have seen how to what? How to create strings. Explode how to create string. So basic operation we can perform on string is, for example, the string concatenation. That's joining string. So say we have a first name. So we have a first name. I think let's just put this up Okay, let me leave it there. So we have the first name John, we have the last name this, so we can combine using just the plus sign, right? Just pure plus sign, and concatenate to print a full name. And yes, for the first time you're seeing a different way of using the print, right? And this is called formatted string, and we'll still look at it deeply because this is what we'll be using going forward, as it helps to write cleaner code. Okay, so let's just run it and see what it does for us. Now you can see how it was combine John and Doe using space. We added this space in the middle. All right, we added this space in the middle. It acts like a concatenation function, and that's what it does. It concatenates, or it concatenated the first name with the last name. And for this, all we did is we only multiply the text, because by default we cannot perform a mathematical operation or an arithmetic operation on text. So it just tripled the text. So we say this is text, a repeated text, that's Python asterisk, which is times 3. So it just did Python, Python, Python. So you might want to keep that in mind. So pro tip, while strings are immutable, we can create new strings based on existing ones using various string methods. Okay. So yeah, what are some string methods that we have? So let me say, I'll just bring this out. Okay. Yeah, don't worry about that. So we just add something below. Do that, yeah. So let's say the string variable, let's just say string var. All right. So these are methods, and how do we use them? We use them by dot notation. Okay, we use them by dot notation. Now we can convert to lowercase. You can see the methods. I'll just read through them and maybe we'll look at a few examples and then we'll move on. Okay, so lowercase, uppercase, we can strip them of spaces, right? That means we can remove space, white space, that means unnecessary spaces. If you look at it, we have unnecessary space at the opening, that means leading one, and trailing, that means before and after. Okay, and we can remove certain space either from the left only or from the right. That's L strip, R strip, left or right. We can substitute, right, replacing an old text with a new one. Now in this case we have hello Python, but if we replace Python with Word, we get hello world. Now for the split as well, we can split data, we can split up a text string into a list, right? Split into a list, we can join them, what was splitted, we can join them using space. So what would now, this part is where we join using a particular delimiter. In this case we're using space. We can find the substring of an index. We can find the index of a substring, I mean. So you can see, find the index of this particular substring. That means where does this appear in the major variable. Of course, we change all the s now to what? str variable. Okay, so it will not be s again. We can count the occurrence of a particular character. We can check if the variable starts with or ends with a particular character. We can check if it's an alphabet or it is a digit. See, ABC is alpha or is digit. We can capitalize, we can get it to title case, we can swap, we can also pad with 0. So let's just see a couple of examples and then we'll move on from here. Okay, so let's say we want this. Okay, so we can do a join. So let's say it was splitted already. So first of all, this will take a parenthesis, then we have a list of character. So we can say, hey, okay, now it's yelling at me, so I'll just use double quotes instead. It says A, So yes, and both of them are actually valid. You can use double quote or single quote. So it's best to stick to double quotes in case you have things like this. Of course, there are also ways we can escape those characters. So I think everything can be here. I am a developer. So yep. So I can print it this way. I am a developer. All right. So we have it listed this way. So I'm saying, yeah, just add space to it. So you can see we're getting this new clean stuff that says, hey, I'm a developer. So let's say, for example, we want to save that inside a variable. So we'll call this our str methods. Okay, so saving this inside a variable that I can print later. Take this out. So we'll print that down here. So we'll say str methods. Run it. You can see I'm a developer. Now we can reuse that. So that's one of the beauty of variables. So I can say str methods dot upper, right? And I'll say dot upper. And if I run that, you can see everything has now turned to uppercase. So let's pick one more str methods and say start with. So let's say start with y, true or false. So we say false. Oh, okay. What about h? True or false? And we'll see true. So feel free to use any of this. It's as simple as it is. So let's just pick replace and then we'll jump into another thing. Let's pick replace. So we'll say str methods dot replace. So I want to replace developer with dev. So we're replacing developer with dev, just like that. And if we run it, it says, hey, I'm a dev. So that's what we now get. Hey, I'm a dev. Okay. So if we print that, of course, it will be cleaner. Print. All right. So it says, hey, I'm a dev. All right. And that's what we get. Now let's look at some, I call it chaining operation. So we can actually chain operations one to another. Now look at this simple, dirty string. See extra space on the right, extra space on the left. We also have a new line. This is meant to go to a new line. Okay. So we have crude metric value. Don't worry about that. So this is the dirty metric. For the clean one, we're creating a new variable and we're saying equals to dirty metric dot strip. Now you can see that in a single go, we can combine, we can chain methods. Dot strip, dot lower, and dot replace. So we're saying take out this one and just put empty string, no space at all. And then if we print this out, we get a nice result. See what we get back. So we can chain it that way and it makes work easier for us. It makes work easier for us. By the way, I think we should have round in the mathematical function or the numbers. Yeah, we also have, of course, we have way more than this. Okay, we have more than this. Round. Okay, I'll just leave it like this for now. Of course, all of these are not correct, but we've passed this now. So I'll continue. All right, let's collapse that. So where are we at? So this is where we at. We've seen all of these. Okay, so we have been able to what? Print this properly. Now, string formatting, and like I said, that this is what we'll be using going forward. So it is important that we look at it properly. Of course, we will not be looking at this method at all so that we can keep our mind straight and focused. So let's say we have a precision score of 0.93284 and we have an ID of 45. So we want to print the ID out and then the precision score. Okay. This right here is how we change this to two decimal place floating points. Okay, it's just a way to easily put things on two decimal place floating points. So we're saying precision score, then colon, and we're saying dot 2, then percentage symbol. So if I run this, we're saying what? See, change it to what? 2 decimal place, and we have a what? Percentage right there. But let me make this more clearer. So if we have a variable new user, Jack, new age 12, and I want to print both of them out, so I can just start with F and I open a quote. Now everything I want to do can go well in here. I can say new user, right? New underscore user, okay, lowercase, new underscore user, new underscore user is new age years old. Okay, now the only challenge here is this will print as actual text, but I want you to show the name and the age. So all I have to do, and of course you're probably thinking, why not just use the comma? But there is a better way. All I have to do is put it in a curly bracket like this, and it also even allows us for expression, right? So we can perform a calculation inside the curly bracket right there, right? Just the same way we converted age, right, earlier when we're looking at the basic syntax and structure for input, right? When we're looking at input, if we run this, you can see Jack is 12 years old, and this is much more cleaner and easier to write. So going forward, this is how we will write using the formatted strings. Okay, and with this we have come to the end of text data type, which we call string in Python. So let me collapse it, and then we'll look at the last one, which is Boolean. In this case, we're just focusing on the important things, and then we'll move on to the next. So in this case, this is Boolean, and say Boolean represents truth values. Okay, true or false. That's basically it. True or false. They are fundamental for condition logic and control flow. Condition logic, that's why we have conditional statements. If this, we have seen one earlier, if true, right? Control flow is how execution happens, from where to where, how it runs and how it flows. Okay, now we have just two simple variables. Is sunny? True. Is raining? False. So is it sunny? Don't want to print is sunny. Then we're also checking the type, right? Do not forget that we can check the type. So that's all we're getting. Is it sunny? True. And is of type what? Boolean. Is it raining? False. It can be both, right? It can be both. So it's as simple as that. How about we declare a variable ourselves? We can say finished exercise. Okay, started reading can be true, and then we can just say if started reading print do not disturb. So this is another use case for it. Do not disturb. So since that is already reading, we'll see do not disturb. But when this is false, we'll not see anything. So that means we can just what? Enter. And you can see it doesn't print anything that way. So comparison operations result in Boolean. For example, of course, we have seen how that we can have expression when we are using a formatted string. So we're saying 5 greater than 3. 5 greater than 3 is what? It will only tell us true or false. For this one, 10 is equal to 10. We only get true or false. Here we have Python. Okay. So here we have Python. Okay, I think I missed something out here. Okay, so here we have Python equals to Python. Python equal Python. So this is meant to be a text. So in that case, I will do this to be double. Now, in this case, I want to print out this text, so I will escape the characters. Okay. What can I do instead? I can just use a single quote instead, and everything will work just fine. And I also use a single quote here, and everything will work just fine. Okay. All right, so I can just do this and everything works just fine. However, I can instead escape the string. So get comfortable with it. I'll just do this, escape this, also escape this, and escape this. And you can see the red arrow is gone. So I'm saying do not discard this guy, discard them. Do not see them as closing quotes or opening. So you can see we still have our double quotes printed. So 5 greater than 3, true. 10 equals to 10, true. Python equals to Python, false. Anything that goes in quotes is case sensitive, right? Okay, it's even here. So anything that goes in quotes is case sensitive, all right? So same thing with logical operators. We can use them to combine logic together. For example, it's sunny and it's raining. No. False. That happens once in a while. Yes, no doubt. Where it's sunny and it is raining. Yeah. So it's sunny or it's raining. True. Now for and, all inputs must be true before the output can be true. All the inputs must be true before the output can be true. For or, as long as one input is true, the output will be true. But if no input is true, the output will also be false. But if one input is true out of a million, the output will be true. That's for all. And for not, we're negating the value. We're saying if it's yes, then we're saying not yes will mean what? No. If we say no, not no will mean what? Yes. So that's basically what that is. So if we run it, this is what we get. So pro tip, Boolean values are often the result of comparison operators and are used extensively in if statements and loops to control the flow of our programs. Okay, so that is something for you to keep in mind. So final summary, we have numbers, which is recognized as integer in Python, and you can see an example. We have decimal, which is recognized as float, 3.14. We have text, which is recognized as string, and you can see it goes in quotes. And we have Boolean, which is recognized as true or false. Okay, so with that, we have come to the end of data types as well. As usual, there's always a mini challenge for you. So you have to create an integer variable, number of students, and assign it to a value. Create a float, create string, create Boolean is active, and print the value of each data type using the type and an F string. So that means you say, oh, the type of this variable is, the type of this variable is. So it's not just printing without any text. You have an additional text to it. So concatenate a course name with the string is awesome. So print the result. So you can say, for example, Python is awesome. But course name will be a variable name that you pass in a value, and then you print the course name with the variable. Okay. Now convert average score to an integer and print the result and its new type. Average score in this case, we want it to be whole number. So you convert it and you also print the new type. So that means you have to print the old type as well, so we know what it was before it changed. And yes, this brings us to the end of this particular video. So I believe you have a good grasp of data type, the basic you need to know to get going. And yes, I will see you. Do not forget, it's important that you lay hands on all the exercises. They are designed for you. And yes, you'll still be getting more dedicated exercises for major milestones as well, which you need to put your hands on. So till I see you in the next video, keep practicing, keep learning, keep practicing, keep practicing, keep practicing, and keep practicing. And I'll see you in the next.